Thank you, Mr. President. It is my honor to rise today on behalf of our esteemed Majority Leader, Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, to speak on this very timely and very needed resolution memorializing Governor Hochul to proclaim March 2025 as Women's History Month in our great state of New York. As it was read by our clerk, to recognize the countless contributions that women have made in our past, present, and most certainly our future. And as we take up this resolution today, I want to lift up the words of a well-known abolitionist, feminist, and that is Sojourner Truth. She was someone who, like Dr. Hazel Dukes, who was unwavering in her commitment, courageous in a time where there was imminent danger, but she stood strong, and as she delivered her speech, Ain't I a Woman, at the 1851 Women's Rights Convention, more than 174 years ago, there's a particular piece in that speech I wanted to lift up that I think also helps to characterize why, when you add women, you change everything. If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up. Now, all they're asking to do it, and the men better let them. The words of Sojourner Truth ring true today as we gather our collective strength to face new and continued challenges as a nation, most certainly as a state, and in our respective communities. Mr. President, as we pause today to recognize Women's History Month and to lift up the long and distinguished history of the women of New York, as it has been mentioned, this year marks the 105th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which granted women the right to vote in the United States, and we know that women of color didn't see that right until many years later. We know that it is important that we lift up women like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and we celebrate abolitionists like Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman, all the women of color past and present who continue fighting to ensure justice and dignity for all women. We celebrate trailblazers like Ida B. Wells, a journalist and civil rights activist who fought for social, economic, and racial equality for African Americans and all women, also while co-founding the NAACP in 1909. We also want to thank women who continue to break and shatter not only glass ceilings, but especially for women of color, those ceilings are often made of bricks. And so we have trailblazers in our own state like New York State leader, former Assemblywoman and Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, who became the first Black woman elected to Congress, and in 1972 became the first Black woman to run for president. We also recognize the history of women in this chamber. Most certainly, Mr. President, I was proud to be elected to this body 2 years ago as part of the first ever all-women class of senators ever in our state history. And we have the opportunity and the privilege to serve underneath the leadership of yet another trailblazer by our own Majority Leader, Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who is the first Black woman to lead our respective legislative body. And so while we continue to make important milestones and break records in our state, I wanted to be clear, we have a long way to go. When you talk about issues as it relates to fairness and pay, when we talk about through policy the work we're trying to do to address the very real challenges with maternal mortality rates, when we talk about still having to ensure that we have bodily autonomy as women in this country, it is important that representation in every institution has gender parity. And so as we commemorate Women's History Month, and we lift up these challenges, it is important that we think about the next generation of women leaders, that we are creating a legacy that they can carry this torch of change, of human change, and that, as it says in the saying that we all have heard, strong women, right? May we know them, may we be them, and most certainly may we raise them. Mr. President, I encourage my colleagues to vote aye. I will most certainly be doing that, and happy Women's History Month. Thank you, Mr. President.